Black Ops 3 released on November 6, 2015. It had some big shoes to fill after the massive success of Black Ops 2. For many, Black Ops 2 was the peak of Call of Duty, and Black Ops 4 was the end of the series. So what does that make Black Ops 3, the weird meal child? Maybe, but for a large majority of players, it was the logical peak of the Call of Duty franchise. So I figured, why not? Let's revisit and have a look at the life of Black Ops 3, as Black Ops 6 is just around the corner, and it's a perfect time to have a look. Also, if you like these long form videos and want to see more like this, subscribe and let me know what else you would like to see. I already have a Black Ops 4 Zombies video out, and I plan to release a cyberpunk analysis in a little bit as well, so if that interests you, go check it out. So in this video, I'll be breaking down the campaign a little bit. I won't be talking too much about the campaign in this game. I'll be also talking about the multiplayer, as well as the bonus content, and finally, zombies. This shouldn't take me too long, should it? The campaign really covers the dangers of AI and having implants in your brain, as every one of your teammates ends up losing their mind, as far as I can remember. This campaign was so confusing, I felt like Mason trying to figure out the numbers. The main things I remember story-wise from the campaign was, well...
Train go boom. Outcome. Train go boom. Outcome. Train go boom. Outcome. Train go boom.
Also, the woman getting her face burnt, the rolling blender, and the creepy black void man. I will say, besides the confusing story, the gameplay was actually really good, and pretty fun. So, story-wise, I have to say Black Ops 3 was nowhere near as good as Black Ops 2, but it's definitely better than Black Ops 4's story, as BO4 had nothing really story-wise. Gameplay-wise though, Black Ops 3 has some really cool elements. The abilities you can use throughout the campaign are really enjoyable, as it allows you to approach different obstacles with different methods. Another bonus point that has to go to Black Ops 3's campaign is the fact it's co-op, which hadn't been a feature since World at War, so for the story, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. It has some really interesting elements, but ultimately most of the story is pretty forgettable and extremely confusing. Gameplay features, I'd have to give it a 8 out of 10. BO3 has some really cool elements and arguably has one of the more diverse approaches. When it comes to Black Ops 3's multiplayer, I actually never really played it when it first released. I mostly played zombies, like a lot of zombies. Like 498 hours of playtime on my Steam is zombies. So I decided, to be fair, if I'm going to break down Black Ops 3's multiplayer, I had to spend some time actually playing it. So I decided to have a look, and surprisingly, you can still find Black Ops 3 lobbies in 2024. Although these are really only on Team Deathmatch, Search and Destroy, and Double Weapon XP sessions. Also, if you plan to revisit, just be warned, you're going to be up against people who have max level, who have been playing since 2018. Anyways, let's talk about weapon class selection, shall we? Black Ops 3 follows Black Ops 2's Pick 10 selection, which means you have 10 slots to pick your weapon attachments and perks. Weapon selection in Black Ops 3 is actually pretty good in my opinion, but there could be more to it. I will say though, that although there is a decent selection of weapons, it isn't perfect. The weapons in my opinion aren't really that rememberable. When you think of weapons in Call of Duty, I'm sure you think of the KSG, DSR-50, and the Ballista, or even the MP7. However, to me, BO3's weapons are just forgettable. There's nothing unique or really making them stand out. The black market, in my opinion, is the worst part of Black Ops 3's multiplayer. I would be okay with it if it was just camos and cosmetics, but I have a problem with the fact that you can unlock special guns through the black market. I have never liked in-game purchases where you have to spend in-game currency that is difficult to earn to unlock special guns that aren't even guaranteed. BO3 has plenty of this, and in my opinion was Treyarch's greediness coming through. This was them taking advantage of children and adults, as it's no secret that gambling is addictive, especially on younger players. Also, don't give me the kids shouldn't be playing excuse. I'm sure most of you were underage when you first played Call of Duty. I mean, I know I was. Sniping in Black Ops 3 is definitely not the easiest with the new movement, although this does make it very satisfying when you actually connect. The assault rifles are enjoyable and unique, and most SMGs are pretty easy to use. The movement in-game is very fast-paced and was definitely inspired from Advanced Warfare. However, the thrusters are definitely not as aggressive in Black Ops 3. As instead of looking straight ahead and at the ground for campers, you have to look at the sky, as you never know when a grown man is going to land straight on your head. The most interesting new implementation to Black Ops 3's multiplayer at the time was the specialist characters, who bring a unique ability to each match you play. They all have a unique history, so let's break them down and see who has the most interesting past and who also is the most useful. All specialists have two abilities, one being offensive and one being more defensive slash passive. Ruin, also known as Donnie Walsh, doesn't have a massive fleshed out past. He's mostly headstrong and has massive respect by his other operators for his courage. His offensive ability is the gravity spikes. These spikes are great when people are grouped together as it can take out a whole team. This ability is mostly useful on game modes like domination and hardpoint. His more passive ability is overdrive. Overdrive is actually a lot of fun, I enjoyed using it quite a bit. You basically just turn into a souped up Usain Bolt. So overall I'm gonna give Ruin a 5 out of 10. He's a good middle ground specialist, but he isn't great, but isn't terrible. Outrider, also known as Alessandra Castile. I'm just going to say right now, I'm probably going to mess up some of these names, so I do apologize. She originates from Brazil, and she is the least augmented with only a replaced arm. She does wear an exoskeleton, however, to keep up with the rest. Her offensive ability is Sparrow, which is her explosive bow, which deals great damage when you connect with someone. Her passive ability is Vision Pulse, which is great. It highlights enemies through walls, however it doesn't reach a great distance. I would have to give Outrider a 6 out of 10. Her abilities aren't the greatest, but she is definitely fun to play as. The fact she literally only had a cybernetic arm and bow while fighting people is also massively impressive. Nomad, also known as Tavo Rojas, was born in Colombia in 2015. Nomad is an expert in jungle warfare and his preferred method of combat is ambushes. Outrider and Spectre are the only fellow members of the Black Ops unit that actually like his idea of ambushing enemies. Nomad is also the second least augmented operator. While Nomad may avoid cybernetic augmentations, he does wear an exoskeleton to help him on the battlefield. Nomad's offensive ability is Hive, which in my opinion is one of the worst ways to go out in Black Ops 3. They're traps that release a swarm of nanodrones that chew through their enemies. However, if you keep an eye out, you can usually see these nests. His passive ability, Rejack, just brings back flashbacks from the perk Last Stand, where basically, if you get knocked down, you can get back up again. For this, I have to give him an 8 out of 10 for usefulness. Hive is great, however, they can be spotted, and Rejack is just OP. It's like any Call of Duty in the past when you've been able to get knocked down and brought back up. It's pretty useful if you're the one using it. Prophet, also known as David Wykes, originated from the UK and he has a serious problem with body mods in cybernetics. He has replaced 70% of his body with cybernetics, making him more machine than human. Despite his respect for his comrades, they mostly seem to ignore his compliments or suggestions. They don't seem to hate him, however, Outrider and Nomad both show disgust at Prophet's cybernetics, which makes sense as they are the least modified out of the group. Prophet's offensive weapon is Tempest, which is an electric rifle that takes a few seconds to charge up. His passive ability, Glitch, basically teleports him back to where he was standing a little bit before. Overall, I have to give Prophet a 2 out of 10. His abilities are the least useful, and there are many operators who are just more helpful on the battlefield. The only reason he isn't a 1 is the fact that he is the most modified human and is the most interesting looking to me. Battery, also known as Erin, not going to try and pronounce last name. We don't know much about her past except for the fact her brother sacrificed himself for her. She is known to respect anyone who can fight well on the battlefield. She only has an issue with Spectre and Nomad due to how they fight. Battery's offensive weapon is a grenade launcher. It isn't a bad weapon, definitely more useful on objective maps. Her passive ability is kinetic armor, which is exactly how it sounds. For usefulness, I'd give her a 6 out of 10. Her abilities are definitely versatile. Seraph, also known as, okay, I'm not going to try and pronounce that, was born in Singapore. She is one of the smartest operators as she is highly educated in geography, language, and science, among others. She's actually an outsider from other specialists as she works for the 54 Immortals, which means she isn't super friendly to others and doesn't say much to the other operators when together. Despite this though, she is strongly dedicated, which you can see when, well, after this she was given an Annihilator, which is a massive pistol that basically annihilates anything you hit with it. Her passive ability is the fact that she can make score streaks easier to achieve. Her usefulness I would say is a 7 out of 10. Her offensive is great as long as you're an accurate shot, and everyone loves getting their score streaks a little bit earlier, right? Reaper is an experimental war robot. Reaper, at least according to Prophet, displays signs of sentience. This is supported by the fact that Reaper was found to have over 64 million file revisions created by himself. It also displays some degree of emotion, such as anger and satisfaction. Prophet also suggests Reaper may be sentient, describing it as being organic in some way. Due to his robotic nature, Reaper rarely, if ever, engages in conversation with other specialists. Despite this, however, he seems to receive both respect and disapproval from other specialists. Spectre and Prophet both seem to give Reaper admiration, while Outrider shows disapproval. His offensive ability is a minigun that is in his arm, which is pretty effective. His passive ability is when he makes clones of himself, which can make it very hard for players to pinpoint who is the real Reaper. His abilities are one of the easiest to use and one of the most effective. For that, I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10 for usefulness. Spectre, only known as Spectre, has very little known about them. They do have some affiliation with the Atlas Corporation from Advanced Warfare, however. Spectre is more of a hired assassin than anything. They seem to get along with Firebreak due to the freedom of the battlefield. Besides this though, they aren't really liked by anyone, even on the same side as them. This is due to the fact of Spectre's mysterious background and hidden intentions. Spectre is occasionally berated for being a lone wolf, and not strictly fighting for their faction's goals. Spectre is particularly disliked by Rune and Battery, who were once nearly killed during one of Spectre's missions. Conversely, Spectre only outwardly shows disdain for Rune for his straightforwardness in fighting, and his willingness to encourage other specialists to do the same. His offensive ability is the Ripper, which is just an extremely bright glowing blade that one-shots enemies. His other ability is to turn invisible, which is pretty good, however it isn't my personal favourite and the least that I've played with. For that, I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10. Firebreak, also known as Christoph, was born in the Czech Republic. He was raised in a very poor household and an abusive one. So much so that he tried to burn his father alive, but failed. After this, he was sent to a correctional facility at the age of 17. This story was retconned later though. Instead of his father surviving the fire, and his sister being badly burnt, his father dies and Firebreak's sister escapes unharmed. Firebreak's backstory is explained further in his backstory comic. Feeling guilty that he robbed his sister of her childhood by killing their father, Firebreak begins to suffer from auditory hallucination. He seeks out his sister Marika in an effort to reconnect and finds her working as a seamstress. His sister is discovered to be badly burnt and the instigator of their father's murder, revealing her to be a pyromaniac. She lights a piece of fabric on fire, causing the textile factory to become engulfed in flames. A section of the roof falls on Firebreak, trapping him. While his sister escapes, she warns him to stay away. This leaves Firebreak in a state of anger as the fire engulfs him. Firebreak seems to care little about his allies. He sees battle less as a danger and more as a physical activity or as fun. He's completely psychopathic and as a result is on a large amount of medication, which seems to have very little effect on him. While Firebreak seems to receive a certain amount of respect from his comrades, he rarely returns the sentiment. Out of all specialists, he really is the most interesting in my opinion, or at the very least, the most messed up. His offense ability is the Purifier, which is basically a flamethrower. It's got a decent effective range and is massively effective in close quarters combat. His passive ability is Heatwave, which emits a massive heat blast that stuns enemies and destroys hostile equipment. This ability is an effective escape tactic when enemies are nearby. It can also be used as an offensive tactic to charge in and stun enemies, then finish them off. For this, I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10 for his effectiveness, and also for the fact that he has the most interesting background. Blackjack, also known as Danny, was a member of the 54 Immortals. He runs the black market in Black Ops 3. He can be unlocked via acquiring a mercenary contract by completing weekly contracts. Each mercenary contract allows the usage of Blackjack for a limited time for 1 hour. His 2 specialist abilities allow him to acquire the weapons and ability of other specialists. In addition, each week there is one side bet that the player can complete to earn exclusive calling cards. I'm not going to give Blackjack a rating as he just copies other characters. It's kind of cool, I suppose. The characters and specialists in Black Ops 3 definitely add another element to the series. Something I do have to give credit to Black Ops 3 is that they were trying to give the multiplayer characters some personality. Now there's 2 points of view to this. You have the view of it's a war game, you should just be another faceless soldier, a part of the machine, which is a fair and understandable point of view. The second point of view is giving the multiplayer characters a background and a history, making them more personal, thus actually giving players a connection to the operators. Where do I personally sit on this debate? Honestly, I like the faceless soldier, no different from the person next to me sort of feeling. Although I do like the ability to select your character, I would say the best inclusion of this was all the way back in Call of Duty Ghosts, as it was a fresh idea and wasn't too much. You could customize your character without being too different from anyone else. I am not a fan, however, of the bright colors in Black Ops 3's multiplayer. I've always liked the darker and more realistic look for soldiers in Call of Duty, which this seems to have faded over time. I will say, however, this is my personal opinion, and if you like the colourful, insane skins that are released, that is perfectly okay. So, is Black Ops 3 the peak of Call of Duty multiplayer? Well, in my opinion, not even close. Multiplayer in Black Ops 3 isn't bad. It isn't a bad game, but it's pretty forgettable. I think one big problem with this Call of Duty was the incorporation of loot boxes. These methods to prey on people with an addictive personality isn't the best, obviously, which I've always had an issue with. I'm someone who has to be careful, as I do have an addictive personality, and I avoid things that can cause this. However, when it's literally shoved in your face, it can be difficult to avoid. The camos don't look the greatest either. And I'm talking about the ones you can earn, which is a shame, as the ones you can get from loot boxes do look better, but it really shouldn't be that way. This, in my opinion, takes away the specialness of getting diamonds, as well as taking away the bragging rights from getting a camo like that. I mean, just look at BO2's camos. In my opinion, they look the best and were the most fun to collect. I wouldn't have as much of a problem with the loot boxes if there weren't guns that you had to get through the black market, that aren't even guaranteed to you. The whole point of this is to keep you playing to try and earn these weapons, but it's all luck, there's no skill to that. And I'm grateful that after a little while they got rid of this, or at least allowed players to buy skins directly that they wanted, and not just rely on chance. In my opinion, the Modern Warfare series has always been better when it comes to multiplayer mechanics, which isn't surprising, as when you ask OG COD players, and even some of the new ones, they will normally say that Modern Warfare is their favorite game in the series when it comes to multiplayer. Bam, BO3, not peak, mystery solved, and video. That's what I would say, but we still have the bonus content to go through, and then what BO3 is really known for, zombies. Okay, let's talk about the bonus content that Black Ops 3 introduced. Unlike Black Ops 4, where they included all their weird stuff in a difficult menu to traverse, BO3 put all of their experimental content in a section called Bonus. This section has 3 unique modes: Free Run, Nightmare, and Arcade. Free Run is a competitive game mode with level-based challenging courses where players have to maneuver and race through them. It also has weapons that players can use to hit little targets to continue through the map. Each course has a unique aesthetic, but I have to say the maps Infected and Blackout look the coolest. Honestly, this game mode could have been way better with more maps and challenges, but in my opinion, this game mode was more of a training simulator for players to get used to the new movement that was introduced from Black Ops 2. This map is maybe a fun thing to go through once, but its replayability isn't the best. Although I do imagine speedrunners probably did enjoy playing this at the time. Nightmare is one of the weirdest implementations to Black Ops 3. It's basically the story missions, but with zombies. You have access to wall running and the ability to use thrusters. You also can only carry one weapon at a time, which is a bit annoying. I believe it's meant to create more of a challenge, but in reality it's just really off-putting. Nightmare was only accessible on PlayStation 4 and 5, as well as Xbox One and PC. Overall, the mode is not for me. It's really uncomfortable seeing two modes merge together, and the cracks are easy to see. Plenty of buttons don't work at times, and also some story elements just don't make sense. I feel like this mode would have been better if they created a whole new story for the experience. I'm pretty sure they marketed this mode as a story mode for zombies back in the day as well, which in all honesty could have been really good if executed properly. I remember when I first played this game mode, I was strongly disappointed, and I think I played through 3 maps and then I was just done with it. Dead Ops Arcade from Black Ops 1 gets a sequel in BO3. The game mode definitely leans more into the silly side of Call of Duty. I mean, just look at the opening sequence. I will say that the sequel is a lot more fun than the original. There's plenty of unique and new power-ups. The most fascinating to me was the first-person mode. I mean, do you guys remember in the original Black Ops when there were rumors that you could play in first-person mode with a hidden Easter egg? Well, in Black Ops 3, it's an actual ability you can pick up, which is a pretty cool experience. The other abilities are definitely some fun and enjoyable to use, like the tank and the ball of razor blades. Although it's a bit of a gimmick. I've never been a big fan of Dead Ops Arcade, but I will say this is a decent add-on to Black Ops 3. Out of all the bonus content, I will say Dead Ops Arcade is the most fleshed out and enjoyable. For the bonus section, I gotta say, it's okay. I mean, it's not shoved in your face like other CODs, so it's not actually that bad. It's definitely a game mode that's fun to go through once, but probably isn't something you'll revisit regularly. Maybe Dead Ops Arcade if you're into it. Okay, now we're on to the part I know the most about, as well as what really made Black Ops 3 special: zombies. Call of Duty Zombies had a lot to live up to after the massive success of Black Ops 2. Don't get me wrong, BO2 Zombies wasn't perfect, but the game developed a cult following and is considered one of the best to this day. Especially after the ending of the Origins Easter egg, where everything was hinted that everything was just a child's game and everything took place in their imagination. So, what did they do? They released Shadows of Evil. Okay, so I figured I'm going to rate these maps similar to how I did my Black Ops 4 Zombies video. I'm going to rate these maps out of 10 for aesthetic, which is things such as the environment and the colors of the map. The next section will be the map layout. Things like traversal and transportation will be taken into account. The map's wonder weapons and story cutscenes will also be rated. And then finally, the maps will be rated off difficulty and personal enjoyment. I also want to make it clear, I'll be rating the maps on difficulty from 1 being easy and 10 being extremely difficult, and a map being challenging isn't the end of the world or a bad thing. So let's begin, shall we? Shadows of Evil was the first map on release and introduced 4 new characters. Floyd, a boxer that cheated in one of his fights, via padding his gloves leading to the death of another fighter. Jack is a corrupt cop who killed his partner, who he believed would turn on him. Nero was a magician who was in a very tough financial situation, which led to him taking out his wife for the insurance payout. Jessica is a burlesque dancer in an upscale nightclub, upscale being in quotation marks. She ended up in a relationship with a film director, which was caught via a photographer. The photographer blackmailed Jessica, so in return, she lured him into a trap, then taking him out. In Jessica's nightclub, she would meet the previous 3 characters where they would all pass out. These characters would wake up with the mark of the beast on their hand, and meet the Shadow Man for the first time just like we did in 2018. They would later be betrayed by the Shadow Man, but in return destroy his physical body. Sadly, before the Keepers could return the summoning key to them, Richtofen appears and yoinks the key. The next day, they would all perish as their dimension is destroyed. The map has a challenging starting room layout-wise, being placed in an alley. However, it is very easy to get set up. The player can break open the sidewall and start collecting all the pieces for the first part of the Pack Punch rituals. An interesting part of this map is it's very similar to Mob of the Dead. The maps actually take 10 years apart, with Mob of the Dead taking place in the 1930s and Shadows of Evil taking place in the 1940s. In Mob, you have the Afterlife, and in Shadows, you have the Mark of the Beast. In both, you use electricity to power up perks and other power options. Although Shadows of Evil adds the ability to slash and eat zombies as well. The map has 3 main streets, all with a slightly unique style. You need to activate the 4 ritual sites where the 4 main characters are forced to face the person they have killed. After each ritual, the player will be able to gain access to the Pack Punch machine. The map introduces 3 new enemy types, the Magua, the Parasites, and the Insanity elements. The map also introduces a new perk, Widow's Wine, which arguably is one of the best perks in the whole series. Gameplay wise, the map is very similar to basic zombies, only incorporating the wall running in the Pack Punch room. For atmosphere, I have to give it a rough 7 out of 10. I do like the semi-futuristic version of the 1940s Morgue City, and it would actually be a place I would visit in the real world. Well, if there wasn't zombies and Cthulhu-inspired monsters everywhere. I would say though that I actually prefer the atmosphere more before the sky turns red and goes to the end of the world sort of vibe. But the zombies do look great, and it's one of the few times where we see zombies that aren't just dedicated to soldiers. The map incorporates close quarters enough that you do feel trapped a lot of the time, however you don't feel completely helpless. One sad part though is the fact that I never really use the higher paths or the catwalk. I only use them to get to the fuses, the perks, and other bits and pieces laying around the map. But in all honesty, I barely ever touch them, and I'm sure that many other players are the same. Wonder Weapons, I have to give it an 8 out of 10. The map definitely brings some variety to the table with the Apothecon Servant and the swords. To get these weapons isn't really challenging. You're bound to get the parts naturally if you work your way through the bosses and new enemies. The other is if you take the train and look into little hidey holes and look for hidden symbols, after which it's just a soul box. Nothing too difficult, but nothing too easy. The Civil Protector, although interesting, has never been the most useful to me because I spend most of my time hanging out in the Pack Punch room. The Civil Protector is useful on other parts of the map though, and it just looks super cool seeing it move around the map. For difficulty, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. Shadows of Evil is one of the easiest maps to play on once you know where everything is. The map gives you the tools to last till a very high round. Shadows of Evil is the map I have the highest rounds on personally. The only real threat is the Magua, which is only a real pain if it stands in your way and blocks your path. For cutscenes, I have to give it a 3 out of 10. The cutscenes just really don't do anything for me. The opening scene is a good introduction to these characters, but in all honesty, they just aren't that engaging. The Easter egg cutscene is okay, but in all honesty, it was probably more exciting back in the day as it hinted at Richtofen returning, but for a standalone scene, it just isn't that great. Personal enjoyment, I have to give it a 7 out of 10. It is a great map, however, its replayability isn't super fantastic, due to how easy it gets once you're fully equipped. However, for the first map in Black Ops 3 Zombies, it definitely wasn't a disappointment at the time. The Giant was the second map to be announced in Black Ops 3 and originally was available to players who pre-ordered Call of Duty Black Ops 3 Collector's Edition. The map was the reintroduction to BO2's crew from Origins. We get to see more of their original personality here. They definitely are a lot more stable than the BO1 crew without the impact of 935. Dempsey doesn't seem to suffer from memory loss or his loss of intelligence. Takeo doesn't suffer from lack of speech anymore and he no longer only talks in Japanese proverbs. Nikolai no longer needs alcohol to function, and Richtofen, well, he isn't completely mad. The map is a remake of Doris from Black Ops 1. The map does contain an Easter egg where you need to throw a monkey bomb into the teleporter and then teleport with it. After this, a big red button will glow and you can press the button, which causes a laser to melt some snow and reveal an extra perk. The map layout is pretty good. It has a nice mixture of tight quarters and open space. The safest place on the map is definitely near the power switch. The atmosphere of the map is dark and gloomy with some nostalgia within it. The special weapons on this map include the Wonder Waffle, as well as the Annihilator after you play a quick game of hide and seek. So for atmosphere, I have to give it a solid 6 out of 10. The reason I placed it at this point is, although it looks great, it is an original, which in my opinion takes away some of its flair. The dark rundown facility vibes do look great, and it is always nice to see a map updated to the modern era. For map layout, I'd have to give the map a 4 out of 10. The map is pretty simplistic when it comes to layout, but that's to be expected when it comes from a remake. The new movement just makes traversing around the map super easy and not challenging at all, as well as with the help of Gums and other perks. For wonder weapons and special weapons, the map gets a 5 out of 10. The Wonder Waffle is great and nostalgic. However, it isn't perfect, especially when you're training, as when you fire it, the zombies will freeze in place, which in return then can block your path, making it harder to travel the map. The Annihilator isn't all that great, although it does look super cool. Yes, it's a one-shot kill, but it isn't very effective going through all hordes of zombies. It's definitely more useful when you're trying to go through a doorway and there's a zombie in the way and it's just one and not a massive group of them. Difficulty-wise, 3 out of 10. The map is really easy. It was definitely more difficult back in the day, but with all the new movement features and the wonder weapons and the Gums, the map is 100 times easier. Cutscene-wise, I mean, I have to give it an 8 out of 10. It was definitely a hell of an introduction with us getting to hear Richtofen send Maxis and Samantha through the teleporter again. There was also a great cutscene with fleshing out the premise characters a bit more, personality-wise. But I will say the best moment is with Richtofen, when he literally shoots the BO1 version of himself. As far as we knew at the time, we would never see the Black Ops 1 crew after this again. Also, Richtofen was just so cold about it, and it was a great way to start the story and definitely get people more invested at the time, and it still holds up to this day. Personal enjoyment, 5 out of 10. The map isn't bad, but there's better in my opinion. I'll occasionally go back to the Giant, but it's not one I play regularly. However, it is always nice seeing maps like this remastered. Der Eisendrache, which in German stands for the Iron Dragon, was the first DLC map released on Black Ops 3. The map is 50% bigger than the Giant. It takes place in the Austrian Alps and a place called Griffin Castle. The snowy castle vibe mixed with the cold steel of metal machinery is a great combination. The map contains 3 dragon heads similar to the dogs from Mob of the Dead. After feeding these dragons, the players will unlock Wrath of the Ancients, an explosive bow and arrow, which can be upgraded to have 4 different abilities similar to the elemental stars from Origins. These 4 upgrades include Rune Prison, Demon Gate, which basically causes little skeleton heads to appear that munch on other zombie heads, Wolf Howl, which slows down zombies it hits while causing damage at the same time. It also has a charge shot that releases 2 wolves that deal serious damage, and my personal favorite, the Storm Bow that shoots little orbs of electricity, and a Fall Tornado if you charge it up. This map also reintroduced the Wonder Fizz machine, allowing players to end up with perks that aren't actually located on the map. For atmosphere, I have to give the map an 8 out of 10. The map has a very cold demeanor to it. The old decaying castle mixed with the snow and cold steel really brings this map together. Also, the castle on top of the hill vibe looks amazing to this day. Okay, map layout might seem controversial. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Moving around this map really isn't that enjoyable. In all honesty, the most fun and unique part of this map layout is the pyramid room, where you basically get moon gravity and can run along the walls. The launch pads are also enjoyable, but in all honesty, I never really touched them. Most of the time I was training at the Pack-a-Punch machine on top of the castle, or I was in the pyramid room. For special weapons, the map gets an 8 out of 10. The map in all honesty only really has the bows, and the Ragnarok DG4. However, the reason for such a high ranking is for the fact that every player can have a wonder weapon on this map. The versatility in each weapon also makes using each one a unique and enjoyable experience, unlike other maps. For challenge of the map, I must give it a 6 out of 10. The map, in my opinion, is in that good middle ground of somewhat challenging and not stress you out challenging. In all honesty, the map is really only challenging when you're trying to achieve the bows and complete the Easter egg. For the cutscene and story elements, I have to give the map a 7 out of 10, but I'm personally not a fan of this art style. However, the real spectacle of this map is the fact that the moon gets blown up instead of the Earth. We also got more of an explanation on the fact that the crew are taking out alternate versions of themselves. One thing I was sad when it comes to these cutscenes is the lack of interaction that Dempsey gets to have with his alternate version of himself, as he is on ice. For personal enjoyment, I'd give the map a 7 out of 10. I really like this map, but it's definitely better with friends. However, the goal of getting each bow is definitely something to look forward to each playthrough. Zetsubou no Shima, also known as the Island of Despair, reintroduces Japanese zombies, since Shinonuma. It takes place on an abandoned island in the Pacific Ocean, where there is a ruined Division 9 base. The map introduces new enemies like the spiders, which can be a real pain when it comes to blocking paths. There's also mutated zombies that are massive, and they appear when they're affected by spurs that are all around the map. You also get to be a gardener, as you can grow different types of plants on this map. I have to give the map a 10 out of 10 for atmosphere. This map had a vision for its environment and it executed it perfectly. In the past, jungle environments in Call of Duty Zombies has always had a quality problem, but with Black Ops 3 Zombies, they're able to go full out, especially because story-wise, the world is no longer destroyed. The map is dark and creepy and really embodies the cold, dark environment a tropical island would actually be like. The use of spiders replacing dogs was also a brilliant decision, as this sticks to the theme of the jungle so well. For layout, I'd have to give the map an 8 out of 10. This is the first Zombies map that includes swimming as a movement feature, which really changes up the layout of the map and the way you play. There are many hidden paths on the map that are easy to miss if you aren't paying attention. The map also has many layers, with the labs being above ground level. The ground level itself is extremely hilly, which suits the environment. The underground labs is also close quarters, but isn't too confining. The use of pipes are great, even though in real life you would probably drown. The use of spurs on the map are definitely a pain, as it stops you from being able to shoot. However, they aren't just a pain, they actually serve a useful purpose, as you can use them to breathe underwater. They'll actually give you a speed boost as well if you shoot them with the KT-4. The map has only 2 special weapons, however with this, I'd have to give the map a 7 out of 10 for wonder weapons. Just hear me out. The first one being the KT-4. It features an alternate firing mode that can release a powerful shot, making it effective against large groups of zombies or tougher enemies. It is a buildable wonder weapon that isn't too difficult to build, and actually collecting the parts can be enjoyable. Its base form isn't the greatest, but after it is upgraded, it definitely has a bit more of a kick to it. It also has the added perk of removing spider webs that are in the way, making traversal much easier to the map. The other special weapon on the map is the Skull of Nansup. This wonder weapon, in my opinion, is one of the best in the whole series. It has the ability to vaporize. It raises zombies in the air before obliterating them, causing them to emit bright lights from their eyes. This attack is especially useful as it wipes out large hordes all at once. Mesmerize is the second ability, making any aggressive zombies, spiders, or thrashers docile within the field of view of the skull. It's also used to reveal hidden objectives and effects around the map. Zetsubou no Shima, in my opinion, is the second hardest map in all of Black Ops 3, so I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. The map is challenging due to the close quarters, as well as the boss zombies. I mean, there's literally a giant spider boss fight that if you run out of ammo, you're going to be stuck at. Now, to be fair, this boss fight isn't super hard, you just have to shoot the spider in the mouth when it's glowing yellow. However, it's still a boss fight. The spiders are also just a pain on this map, as they can block your path, and if you're not paying attention and don't have the KT-4, you can run straight into a dead end you didn't even know was there. The cutscenes for Zetsubou no Shima, in my opinion, is extremely underrated. We get to see how much of a badass Takeo really is in these scenes, as well as his loyalty to the Japanese emperor, which you can see as he only loses his cool after he was called a traitor on the boat with the other Japanese soldiers, and the fact that his other self was locked in prison, especially because he shares the memories of his counterpart. Takeo points out that death would have been merciful compared to what his counterpart was put through. When he learns that the emperor he has dedicated his life to was the cause of this, you can see the shock and horror this realization brings to him. This scene for me is one of the most emotional story beats in Black Ops 3 Zombies to me. The fact that Takeo learns about his betrayal, but instead of letting that completely destroy him, he keeps his moral code and still follows a moral path, giving his counterpart the chance to die honorably. In this, he is also letting go of the past and is deciding to do what he believes is right for himself. The music also just adds to this scene. I did some research, and the closest I could find to what instruments are being played in the background is a traditional lute. However, I may be wrong, so if you know, please let me know in the comments. For my personal enjoyment, I was surprised. I never played much of this map back in the day due to the fact it was a bit much for me. However, coming back and having another look at it, I have to say it's a really well designed map, with a decent challenge and experience. So for that, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 for me. Gorod Krovi, also known as the City of Blood in English. I have to say this is probably my least favourite map out of all the DLCs when it first came out back in the day. This map was the third to be released out of all 4. It takes place in an alternate war-torn Stalingrad, where the war has gone on for so long that most soldiers are dead. The battlefield is now only full of zombies, dragons, and mechs, which honestly was a bit insane for the time. The atmosphere of Gorod Krovi is pretty amazing. The war-torn city is one thing, but the massive dragons and Russian mechs really make you feel small. The city is dead and decaying, and you can really feel it. The map also makes you feel alone, even though there is a war raging on around you. The map definitely has some fantasy elements to it, but it really doesn't feel out of place. For this, I'm going to give the map a 9 out of 10. It's one of those maps that every section has somewhere cool or interesting to look at. For layout, I'd have to give the map a 6 out of 10. The reason for this is, it's a very challenging map to find your way to get around. and you're most likely going to get lost multiple times, especially if you haven't played it regularly. I want to make it clear that just because I'm rating the layout so low to other maps doesn't mean I don't understand why the map is built like this. In real life, a ruined city, especially one in a war zone like Stalingrad, was extremely difficult to traverse in the real world, especially in a world without dragons and massive mech suits everywhere. Most gunfights were very close quarters in the real world, so for realism with layout, I'd have to give it some points for that. However, in zombies, it definitely makes it a little bit more difficult to traverse and explore. The map also allows you to ride dragons from one location to another towards the Pack-a-Punch machine. Besides this though, there isn't much more to the traversal of this map. This map, in my opinion, has the most fun weapons when it comes to all of zombie maps in Black Ops 3. The most exciting introduction is the GKZ-45 MK9, which is basically the ray gun Mark III. It is honestly one of the most effective weapons in the series and works well with the close quarters of this map. You can also get a Dragon Strike controller, which is basically a monkey bomb / airstrike, where dragons will rain down fire onto your target. You can also get the PPSH on this map, which is definitely a lot of fun. So for that, I'm going to give the wonder weapons on this map a 9 out of 10. This map still destroys me after all these years. It is the map I have played on the least, and it's just because it's such a challenging map. It introduces new enemies such as the Mangala, which is a zombie in a mech suit. That is a pain, but definitely isn't as annoying as the Panzer. You also have to deal with the Valkyrie drones that replace dog rounds. There's also electrified zombies, and then you also have the Nikolai boss fight where the raps from the main game make an appearance. I have to give the map a 10 out of 10 for difficulty, as in my opinion, Gorod Krovi is the hardest Black Ops 3 zombies map for the reasons I've listed above. This in my opinion doesn't make the map bad, it just makes the map one that you will have to try very hard on to stay alive. Or you're probably just going to have to accept the fact that death is just around the corner. I have to give the map an 8 out of 10 for the cutscenes, as the opening scene has a great musical number with Ace of Spades and with the characters falling from the sky. This scene is fast paced and straight to the point. It is also nice to see Peter McCain even if he's dead again. The only reason this doesn't get a 10 out of 10 for cutscenes is that in my opinion, Nikolai talking / confronting himself in the Easter egg cutscene isn't as impactful as Takio's. However, I do like the detail of Takio comforting Nikolai after he's forced to shoot himself. It just shows that a little bit more of a connection they will have. However, I did take a couple of points off also for the fact that them getting beamed in the sky does look a little bit goofy. For personal enjoyment, I'm going to give the map a 7 out of 10. This map is fun, but it isn't the easiest, but that isn't a bad thing. The wonder weapons are enjoyable to use, and the new enemy types are really enjoyable to fight against. I also like the variety that this map introduced. It may not be for everyone, but for me, it was enough. Revelations is the final original map released for Black Ops 3. It was marketed at the time to be the grand finale for the premise crew, and was aimed to wrap up the story as a whole at the time. The map takes place in Agartha after the Shadow Man is released from the summoning key, in which our heroes would have to set off to fix everything. There isn't quite another map with this sort of atmosphere. The closest is maybe Moon. The map features a cosmic aesthetic and includes map elements from other maps spread throughout. The map is kind of one big ring, with each section being inspired from other maps previously. In the center of the map is the first ever zombies map, Nacht der Untoten, which definitely held some symbolism being the first map that was ever released. The map definitely aims for an end of the world sort of vibe, and it definitely does a good job of that. For all these reasons, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 for atmosphere. I really do enjoy the cosmic sort of look to this map, and the way that all the elements are mixed together actually works quite well, and isn't too overbearing or too little. Also, the inside of an apothecon is as disgusting as you could imagine. The layout of the map relies heavily on launch pads in the beginning to get from one location to another. However, besides this, the main method I used to get from one place to another was the portals that you can unlock around the map. These portals are great, however it really stops players from using the launch pads and causes them to stick to the same route unless they have something they have to grab. The most spacious spot on the map is definitely inside the apothecon, and it's probably one of the easiest spots to survive on this map. For special weapons, I'd have to give the map a 3 out of 10. There really isn't much. I mean, we do get an upgraded Apothecon Servant and the DG4, but that's about it. They are good weapons, but I mean, there is nothing new or special about them. Other maps did way better, in my opinion. The map has many narrow pathways, which makes traveling from one place to another a bit challenging. However, this is very limited. There's plenty of sections of the map with open spaces, especially around the altars, which really only makes the dangerous areas being when you have to go from one place to another. This danger though basically becomes non-existent, as when the portals are open you can avoid the most dangerous areas of the map. The map also introduces a new enemy known as the Fury. It's like a very messed up smooth dog. In my opinion, this map is probably the third most challenging map out of the entire lot, so for that I'm going to give it a solid 7 out of 10. These scenes had a lot to live up to at the time. It was the moment in which we would see how the story would finally end. We finally got to see Dr. Monty, basically a god, recreate a whole new world. The voice actor for Dr. Monty, Malcolm McDowell, does an amazing job, and I couldn't imagine a different voice for the character. We get to see Maxis reunite with Richtofen after he was just a brain in Origins. The Easter egg scene is also pretty good in the fact that it wraps up the story while keeping the crew alive, unlike, well, you know, another game. It also gets bonus points for showing us Nikolai's hair for the first time. I mean, just look at this man without his helmet. He's actually a really good looking dude under there. I know for some it might be low, but it's just one of those things. It's really hard to end a series, and at the very least this was an attempt. I may have put it higher if the story did finish there, but however, with Black Ops 4 the story did continue, and in my opinion took away a lot from this ending. Now, before I say anything, I'll make it clear, Revelations isn't the worst map around, but my personal enjoyment is a 5 out of 10. I don't hate or like this map. It looks great and is definitely interesting, but it just doesn't do anything for me. It just doesn't hit like a zombies map should do for a finale, in my opinion anyways. And I'm done.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Oh, come on, I'm already at 7,000 words on this script. Okay. I'm going to be quick when it comes to Chronicles because this is just remasters of original maps with very little changes, but yet it's still important to cover. Chronicles was released on May 16th, 2017 for PS4 and June 15th, 2017 for Xbox One and PC. It included remasters of 8 original maps from Black Ops 1 and World at War. The first map was Nukta and Toten, the very first zombies map that was released on World at War. This remaster adds the Wonder Fizz machine and Gobblegums to the map, which really makes the map more enjoyable and playable. The barrel explosions look realistic as well. The Asylum Afarukt is much brighter than the OG. Getting to see the horrors of the map in HD is definitely something. The map is more interactable as you can stand under a shower and get a good clean. You still start separated from other players, which can make getting quick revive a real pain if you're playing by yourself. Also, the chalk drawings look a little funny remastered. I just don't know, it just doesn't hit the same when it's in HD quality, I suppose. Shino Numa, in my opinion, is one of the best looking maps out of all the remasters that came out. The huts look amazing and the atmosphere does a great job showing what it would look like in a jungle like this. Although traversing through the water is definitely a pain because it still slows you down way too much. Shangri-La looks great, especially for another jungle map. Can you guys tell that I really like the jungle maps? The Lost City vibe looks great, and traversing this map is a lot easier with the introduction of the Gobblegums. Also, the zombies on this map are really horrifying to look at. At the very least, they are the creepiest to me. Shangri-La also includes Widow's Wine now. Ascension looks great as well. The black and white filter isn't as harsh as it was back in the day. The monkeys still look great, although they're still super annoying. The map also includes the Wonder Fizz machine. I don't have much more to say except that the landers are a lot of fun to ride on. Moon, in my opinion, is one of the best looking maps out of all the remastered maps. And it's probably one of the most enjoyable in my opinion. I definitely enjoyed it quite a lot because I didn't get to play much of it back in the Black Ops 1 days, as I was a child and couldn't afford it at the time. The gameplay is definitely a lot smoother than Black Ops 1 was, and you don't really notice the Gobblegums on this map either, which is kind of surprising. I think my favorite part of this map though is when you watch the earth blow up, it just looks stunning. Origins. Okay, this map looks great, but come on, rework the cutscene or at least put a filter on it. It's so jarring having the opening scene look the exact same as it was on the PS3, with all the pixels everywhere. It's also off-putting as the other maps' loading screens have been reworked and look great, but to be fair, they are still images and aren't actually a cutscene. Besides this though, the map's camos and the giant robots look great, especially in the remastered quality. This map is also the only Black Ops 2 map out of all the remasters to be released. The Gobblegums really helped with these maps. It definitely makes them more forgiving. I mean, Anywhere But Here saved me in Shangri-La many of times, especially because it's a map which I knew very little bit about until this came out. So now that we've gone through them very quickly, I will admit, these remastered maps are amazing, and in all honesty is what makes Call of Duty Black Ops 3 Zombies so great. The original maps that were released for Black Ops 3 Zombies is definitely not forgettable. They all have a unique experience to them and are fully original except for the giant. The use of Gobblegums were a great introduction. This gave players an added hand to complete Easter egg steps without the game actually holding their hand and doing it for them. Gobblegums in Monty's Factory is actually a great introduction, as unlike the black market, it doesn't affect other players in a negative way. It's also easy to earn in-game, so you don't have to spend the money to buy the credits. The weapon customization actually isn't unreasonable either. It actually makes it getting a random gun from the mystery box not a complete nightmare if you get something you don't want. For example, do you remember when you would get the SMR from the mystery box and you would die inside a little bit on Black Ops 2. With this customization in Black Ops 3, getting a gun that is horrible isn't the end of the world, even if it's still not great. Getting to pick camos also adds another layer to personalizing your experience. Also, the fact that you can unlock camos in zombies also gives players another goal to reach, other than completing the Easter eggs. These are all great, but I think the real shining star was the use of nostalgia with Chronicles. Chronicles made Black Ops 3 Zombies the game with the most maps and variety out of the whole series up to this point. It was the perfect execution of something like this. They introduced the new first, then offered a remaster to the old to give OG COD players a chance to revisit these maps in a higher quality. After this game though, they definitely fumbled with Black Ops 4 trying to make something new out of the old. They introduced the new first, then offered a remaster of the old to give OG players a chance to revisit these maps in higher quality. Black Ops 3 executed this perfectly, unlike Black Ops 4, which went the route of remaking maps without being fully original in the base game. Now, does this make Black Ops 3 Zombies the best in the series? Well, in my opinion, it definitely comes close at the very least. That is all it is an opinion. Everyone has their own favorite Call of Duty zombie series and maps. You can't be certain, but in my opinion, Black Ops 3 has some of the greatest game design and atmosphere in all of the Call of Duty Zombies experience. But there's one thing that really makes Black Ops 3 so special, something I've left to the very end, and in my opinion is what makes Black Ops 3 the easiest to revisit out of the whole series. Mods. Modding tools were reintroduced on Black Ops 3 and actually was supported and pushed to the public. Black Ops 3 modding became the most successful out of the whole series just next to World at War. As before this, most modern maps that people played on was from World at War. Installing mods from Black Ops 3 was also made super easy as you can install them straight from the Steam Workshop. These mods could include game changes, models and visual effects, and most importantly, zombie maps. At the time of recording, there is over 5,757 mods available on Steam alone. These mods introduce so much variety of players. You could play on a new map for every day of the year and you wouldn't run out. This is what makes Call of Duty Black Ops 3 so amazing. The game was given to the community where many talented members have been able to create complete masterpieces for free or donations that the public can enjoy. This, in my opinion, is what makes Black Ops 3 Zombies one of the greatest of all time. It's not the multiplayer, it's not the zombies, it's not the bonus content, and it's definitely not the campaign. It's the fact that the community that knows what they want was given the freedom to create and expand upon something to make it a game that wouldn't die within a year. Okay, so conclusion time. I'm done now, I promise. Black Ops 3 as a standard game is okay. It is definitely hard to say if it was the peak of Call of Duty, and it really depends on what you were there for. If you were there for the story, in my opinion, there is definitely much better that was released before and afterwards. If you were there for the multiplayer, it wasn't bad at all, but it doesn't really compete with the Modern Warfare series. However, the Advanced Movement was okay and wasn't too jarring, unlike Advanced Warfare. The real magnum opus of this game is Zombies, which isn't hard to see as the community is still massively active and lively to this day. In my opinion, if we aren't taking into consideration nostalgia, Call of Duty Black Ops 3 isn't the best Call of Duty, but it is the best Call of Duty Zombies experience out there. But hey, at the end of the day, this is just my opinion. Look at that, you made it to the end of the video. That's insane. If you like this video, why don't you check out my Black Ops 4 video, and yes, I am aware of the 2 main mistakes I made in that video. Give me a break, I've only made 3 videos like this so far, so be nice. Also, if you have suggestions for other video ideas, feel free to leave them in the comments and let me know if you want to see more stuff like this. Anyways, if I don't see you again, have a lovely life, live to the fullest, all that jazz. Peace.